Is there a Bible passage that teaches that Jesus pre-existed before his birth in Bethlehem? Well, this is an excellent question for us to consider. There are many people who think of Christ as having an existence which began on that day in Bethlehem when the baby Jesus was born in a stable and laid in a manger. But this was not the beginning of Christ at all. The Bible teaches that he had a pre-existence, that is, he was alive and active from eternity and before the world was even made. Today I'd like for us to consider a few passages because there are several that teach this truth. On one occasion, Jesus told the Jews who were opposing him publicly in John 8:58, "Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." Now, friends, Abraham had been dead about 2,000 years at the time Jesus said these words to the Jews. This naturally confused them, and they replied in verse 57, "Thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham?" Unless Christ had been around longer than his fleshly age, they felt that it would not have been possible for him to have had dealings with Abraham 2,000 years earlier. But notice Jesus' reply in verse 58, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am." Christ, without hesitation, told them that he was in existence before Abraham, more than 2,000 years before the time he was making this statement. Now, this greatly angered his audience so much that they took up stones and were prepared to stone him to death for what they saw as blasphemy. But the text says that Christ walked right through them, passed them by, and went to safety. On another occasion, while Jesus was praying to his heavenly Father, he uttered these words in John 17 and verse 5, "And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was." I want you to notice that he said that he had glory with God before the world was. He was recalling to his Father a glory which he once shared with him before the world even came into existence at the command of God. Now, speaking of Bethlehem, there is a prophecy in the Old Testament which foretold that a ruler would come out of that little town, a ruler who would have a pre-existence from eternity. Let's look at that prophecy while we're talking about it. The passage is found in the book of Micah, chapter 5 and verse 2. "But thou, Bethlehem, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting." Notice what he says. He says that this ruler had goings forth from old, from everlasting, meaning he had always been. But not only did Christ have a pre-existence before he entered into the flesh and was born of Mary with the name Jesus, we see he was also in on the creation of the world itself. Paul tells us that God created all things by Christ in Ephesians 3 and verse 9. And as the Apostle John put it, he was known as the Word. And all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. John 1 verses 1 through 3. And this explanation, we see this as something that seems strange. But this explains that strange statement that was made by God at the time that he was creating the world, where he said, "Let us," not "let me," "let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Now, that passage may seem strange to us just on the surface, but whenever we consider the fact that not anything was made without Jesus, we see that both God and Christ were there. Christ was in this pre-existing state. Now, God uses these plural terms, us and our, in expressing His intention of making man. Man was made after the likeness of God and of Christ. So yes, we see Christ had a pre-existence. He has always been and will always be. God sent Him down from heaven to take on human flesh for the purpose of dying for the sins of this race. But this was not the beginning, nor will it be the end of Jesus Christ. Friends, we thank you for joining us for our program today, and may God bless you with a wonderful day.